Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, Foundation of Sand. Maxwell Max Donovan had always believed family came first. At 48, he'd built his life around that principle. A successful construction business that transformed neglected properties into architectural marvels, a sprawling home in Oak Ridge's most prestigious neighborhood, and what he thought was a happy 20-year marriage to Victoria. Max hadn't come from money. The calluses on his hands told the story of a man who'd climbed from nothing, working construction sites from 16 until he saved enough to start his own company. His father had abandoned the family when Max was 12, leaving his mother to raise 3 children alone. The memory of her exhaustion after double shifts as a hospital janitor had fueled his drive. "You'll never be your father," his mother had told him on her deathbed 10 years ago. "You built something real." Victoria Barrett had been the daughter of wealth, the princess of Oak Ridge Country Club where Max had been hired to oversee renovations. Their meeting had raised eyebrows, the rough-edged contractor and the socialite. Her family, especially her mother Pamela, had never fully accepted him despite his eventual success. "New money is still new," Pamela would say within earshot at family gatherings, gin and tonic in hand. Their son Alexander, Alex, had been Max's pride. From the boy's earliest days, Max had been hands-on, attending every baseball game and science fair when Victoria claimed social obligations. He'd taught Alex to fish at the lake house, to change a tire, to stand up for himself. "Dad, you know why I work so hard?" 17-year-old Alex had asked one night in his home workshop where they were restoring a vintage motorcycle. "Because I've seen what you built from nothing." The cracks in the marriage had appeared gradually. Victoria's increasing coldness. The separate bedroom she'd insisted on 2 years ago, citing Max's early morning job site visits. The unexplained weekend retreats with friends Max never met. He'd buried himself in work, in raising Alex, telling himself things would improve after Alex graduated and left for college. 3 days before graduation, Max had been in his study reviewing contracts when his phone buzzed with a text from Alex. "Need to talk, Dad." "Don't tell Mom." They'd met at their favorite diner, where Alex had pushed his fries around the plate nervously. "Dad, I think something's wrong with Mom," he'd finally said. "She's been acting weird. Secretive. I heard her on the phone saying she can't wait much longer and needs to finalize things." Max had reassured his son, suggesting business matters or perhaps a surprise for graduation. But the conversation had planted a seed of unease that grew as graduation approached. The night before the ceremony, Victoria had announced that her family would be attending in full force. "My mother wants to sit front and center," she'd said, not meeting his eyes. "She's bringing Uncle Howard and Aunt Liz too." "No problem," Max had replied, distracted by pricing a new development project. "As long as we're all there for Alex." He hadn't noticed Victoria's slight smile as she turned away, phone clutched in her hand. That evening, Max had received a strange email from his accountant, a routine notification about a significant withdrawal from their joint account. Thinking it a system error, he made a note to call the bank on Monday. The morning of graduation, Victoria had left early to help set up. Max had arrived alone to find the Barrett family occupying the entire front row, designer outfits, and expensive perfume marking their territory. "Sorry, no room for you," Pamela had said with a thin smile. Victoria saved these seats for family. The words had hit like a physical blow. For family. As if he weren't family at all. Chapter 2, The Revelation. The high school auditorium hummed with anticipation as families filed in for the graduation ceremony. Banners proclaiming "Congratulations, Class of '25" hung from the rafters, and the stage was decorated with the school's blue and gold colors. Max nodded stiffly at his mother-in-law's dismissal and retreated to find a seat near the back. From there, he could see Victoria in the front row, her sleek blonde bob freshly styled, whispering something to her sister Liz. They both glanced back at him and laughed. Principal Hoffman began the ceremony with a speech about bright futures. Max barely heard him, instead watching his wife. 20 years of marriage, and suddenly she felt like a stranger. She kept checking her phone, smiling at texts. When Alex's name was announced as valedictorian, Max's chest swelled with pride. The boy looked so grown up in his cap and gown, confident as he approached the podium. Unlike Victoria's natural blonde, Alex had inherited Max's darker features, strong jaw, intense brown eyes that missed nothing. "Thank you, Principal Hoffman," Alex began. "Today marks not just an end, but a beginning. We stand at the threshold of our futures, shaped by those who believed in us." Max watched his son command the audience with natural charisma. The boy had his determination, but possessed a polish Max had never acquired. "I want to thank the one person who never gave up on me," Alex continued, his voice firm. "Dad, could you stand?" Surprised, Max rose as applause filled the auditorium. Victoria's smile faltered as she turned, seemingly noticing him for the first time. "My father taught me that character isn't built on words, but actions," Alex said. "He showed me that real strength comes from integrity and perseverance." Max felt a lump in his throat as he nodded at his son, pride mingling with confusion at the intensity in Alex's eyes. "And now," Alex continued, his tone shifting, "I'd like to share something I found on Mom's phone last night." The audience went silent. Victoria's face drained of color as she clutched her purse. She half rose, then froze as Alex pulled out a folded document from his pocket. "I wasn't snooping," Alex explained, his voice tight. "Mom asked me to find her reading glasses. When I picked up her phone to call it, a notification appeared." He unfolded the paper. It was divorce papers, already signed and dated yesterday. Gasps rippled through the audience. Victoria sank back in her seat, her sister gripping her arm. "But that wasn't all," Alex continued, his voice growing harder. "There were messages to someone saved as TR about plans for after graduation, about how they'd finally be free." Max stood frozen, the pieces clicking together with sickening clarity. And then Alex said, "I found this." He tapped his phone, and suddenly the auditorium speakers blared with Victoria's recorded voice. "Once the divorce is filed, Max won't know what hit him. Tom's lawyer says we can get at least half the business since Max can't prove I wasn't instrumental in its success. The prenup is useless." "Alex!" Victoria screamed, lunging toward the stage. "Stop this right now." But Alex wasn't finished. He pressed another button, and a photo appeared on the graduation slideshow screen behind him. Victoria wrapped in the arms of a man Max recognized immediately. Thomas Reed, his former business partner who'd left the company 3 years ago. "The truth deserves to be heard," Alex said, his voice breaking. "Dad deserves to know before he's blindsided." Principal Hoffman hurried to the stage, attempting to regain control of the ceremony as murmurs erupted throughout the auditorium. Victoria's family closed ranks around her, Pamela shooting daggers at Max, as if he were somehow responsible for the scene. Max stood immobile, watching as his life imploded in public. 20 years. 20 years of marriage, ending not in a private conversation, but in a public execution. His eyes locked with Victoria's across the distance. For a moment, he saw not defiance, but fear in her expression. Good. Chapter 3. Scorched Earth. The hours following the graduation ceremony passed in a blur for Max. He remembered Principal Hoffman cutting the ceremony short, remembered the pitying glances from other parents, remembered Victoria being hustled away by her family without so much as a backward glance. Alex had found him in the parking lot, still in his graduation gown. "I'm sorry, Dad," he'd said, voice raw. "I couldn't let her blindside you. They were planning to serve you papers tonight at what was supposed to be my graduation dinner." Max had embraced his son tightly. "You have nothing to apologize for." Now, 3 hours later, Max sat in his home office, a glass of whiskey untouched beside him as he methodically reviewed financial records. The house was silent. Victoria hadn't returned, and Alex had gone to stay with his best friend Carson's family for the night, giving Max space. The betrayal cut deep, but something colder was taking hold in Max's chest. Something calculating. His phone rang. Gregory Winters, his attorney and poker buddy of 15 years. "Max, I heard what happened," Greg said without preamble. Victoria's lawyer already called me. Thomas Reed's involved. Tom, Max said flatly. My former partner, and apparently my wife's current one. They're moving fast, Greg continued. Filing first thing Monday morning. They're going after the company, Max claiming she was an instrumental silent partner all these years. Max laughed, a sound devoid of humor. She's never set foot in my office except for the Christmas party. There's more. They've been planning this for months. Victoria's transferred nearly $300,000 from your joint accounts gradually over the past year. And Reed's firm just won the Westridge development bid, the one you were counting on. Max's eyes narrowed. The Westridge project, a $40 million downtown revitalization his company had been pursuing for months. The pieces were falling into place. Tom had inside information from Victoria, had used it to undercut Max's bid. What do they expect me to do? Roll over? Apparently, Greg said, the amount they're demanding in the settlement is substantial. They seem to think you'll want to avoid a messy public court battle. After today's graduation ceremony, that ship has sailed, Max replied. Greg, I need you to secure everything. Business accounts, personal accounts, property deeds. Lock it all down tonight. Already on it, Greg assured him. But Max, Victoria's family has connections throughout this town. Judge Barrett, her uncle, I know. Max's voice was steel. They think they've won already. What are you going to do? Max looked at the photographs on his desk, his parents in front of their modest home, himself breaking ground on his first development, Alex's fishing trophy. Conspicuously absent, any photo of Victoria. I'm going to burn their world to the ground, Max said quietly. But first, I need information. All of it. How long? What they've taken? Who else is involved? Max, I built everything I have from nothing, Greg. I can do it again if I have to. But they don't get to take what's mine without consequences. After hanging up, Max opened his laptop and began making a list. Names, dates, possible allies, definite enemies. The Barrett family had always considered him an outsider, unworthy of their precious daughter despite his success. They'd tolerated him as Victoria's unfortunate choice. Now, they would learn what happened when you cornered a man with nothing left to lose. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I have information you need. About Victoria, Tom, and the others. Meet tomorrow, 1 p.m., Riverside Park. Come alone. Natalie Reeves. Max stared at the name. Natalie Reeves, Tom Reed's executive assistant. The woman who had access to all of Tom's files, calendar, communications. For the first time since the ceremony, Max smiled. Chapter 4. Gathering Intelligence. Riverside Park bustled with Sunday afternoon visitors. Families picnicking, joggers navigating the paths, elderly couples feeding ducks by the water. Max spotted Natalie Reeves on a bench near the boathouse, her red hair unmistakable even from a distance. I wasn't sure you'd come, she said as he sat beside her. No handshake, no greeting. Information is valuable, Max replied, studying her. 30-something, sharp eyes, professional demeanor even in casual clothes. Why are you reaching out? Natalie glanced around before answering. Let's just say loyalty should be rewarded, not betrayed. She handed him a flash drive. Emails, text backups, calendar entries, financial transactions. 2 years' worth. Tom's not as careful as he thinks. And I've had access to everything. Why help me? Max asked bluntly. Natalie's expression hardened. I joined Redevelopment when Tom started it after leaving your company. He promised me equity, a partnership track. Last month, I discovered he's been paying me 30% less than my male counterparts. When I confronted him, he laughed and said I should be grateful for the opportunity. Max nodded slowly. And Victoria? She's been coming to the office for at least 3 years. After hours, weekends. Natalie's lips thinned. Tom's divorcing his wife Diane too. She doesn't know yet. Another casualty in their schemes. Max filed that information away. There's a meeting Tuesday evening, Natalie continued. Victoria, Tom, Judge Barrett, and Lawrence Foster from First National Bank. They're discussing financing for Westridge after your company is neutralized. Their word, not mine. Max's hands clenched. Lawrence Foster, he'd golfed with the man, had his family over for barbecues. Another betrayal. The drive contains everything, including their contingency plans if you fight back, which they expect you will. They've thought of everything, Max murmured. Not everything, Natalie corrected. They don't know about me. After Natalie left, Max remained on the bench, turning the flash drive over in his hands. The perfect spring day continued around him. Children laughing, couples holding hands, oblivious to the storm brewing inside him. His phone rang. Alex, Dad, you okay? I can come home. I'm fine, son. Stay with Carson tonight, as planned. Have you heard from Mom? No, Max said truthfully, but I expect we'll be having a conversation soon. Dad, there's something else you should know, Alex said hesitantly. Last night, before I found those messages, I overheard Mom on the phone with Grandma Barrett. She said something about making sure you never see a dime of the trust. What trust? Max asked sharply. I don't know, but they mentioned Grandfather Barrett's estate. Max thanked his son and hung up, mind racing. Victoria's father, Harold Barrett, had died 3 years ago. The man had never warmed to Max, but they'd maintained a cordial relationship. What trust was Victoria referring to? On his way home, Max drove past Reed Development's office building. A light was on in the top floor corner office. Tom's office. Max slowed, noting the silver Audi in the otherwise empty parking lot, Victoria's car. Sunday afternoon work session. His stomach churned with disgust. At home, Max inserted Natalie's flash drive into his computer and began reading. The scope of the betrayal was breathtaking. Victoria and Tom's affair had begun 4 years ago, not long after Tom had left the company. They'd been planning this coup for at least 2 years, undermining Max's business relationships, siphoning information about bids and projects, methodically preparing to dismantle everything he'd built. But the most shocking revelation came in an email from Judge Barrett to Victoria from 6 months ago. The trust stipulation is clear. If Max contests the divorce or threatens the family reputation, we can invoke Clause 14b. Harold may have included him as a beneficiary, but the moral turpitude clause gives us leverage. Once the divorce is filed, the family trust allocation reverts to you entirely. Max leaned back, stunned. Harold Barrett had included him in the family trust? Victoria and her family had concealed this from him for 3 years, all while planning to cut him out entirely. Just then, the front door opened. Max closed the laptop and moved to the hallway. Victoria stood in the entryway, eyes red but chin defiantly raised. I'm here to collect some things, she announced, as if entering a stranger's home. By all means, Max replied coldly. Though I'm curious which things you consider yours, considering you're trying to take everything. Victoria flinched. You have no idea what you're talking about. And Alex had no right to tell me I was about to be ambushed, to warn his father about a conspiracy. Max stepped closer. How long, Victoria? How long have you and Tom been planning this? This isn't about Tom, she snapped. The Westridge Project. My clients. The Barrett Trust Fund I never knew about. All coincidences. Victoria's composure cracked. You were never supposed to be included in Daddy's trust. It was his senility talking. That money belongs to our family. And what am I? Max asked quietly. An outsider who got lucky, she hissed. My mother was right about you all along. Crude. Unrefined. You never belonged in our world. Max nodded slowly. Then I'll build my own. But Victoria? He stepped closer, voice dangerously soft. You and Tom and your entire family are about to learn what happens when you corner someone with nothing left to lose. Fear flickered across her face before she masked it with contempt. Threats won't help your case, Max. We have everything in place. By this time next week, you'll be lucky to keep this house. After she left with her suitcases, Max returned to his office and picked up the phone. Greg, I need you to find someone. Diane Reed, Tom's wife. And I need everything you can get on Barrett Family Holdings, particularly Harold Barrett's trust. The game was changing. Max wasn't just fighting to keep what was his anymore. He was declaring war. Chapter 5, Alliance Formation. Diane Reed's house was smaller than Max had expected. A modest tutor in the older part of town, well-maintained but lacking the ostentation of new money. The woman who answered the door bore little resemblance to the confident socialite he remembered from company parties years ago. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her face free of makeup, eyes shadowed with exhaustion. "Max Donovan," she said, surprise evident. "I didn't expect. Please come in." The living room featured moving boxes stacked against one wall. A half-empty bookshelf. Signs of a life being dismantled. "You're moving," Max observed. "Downsizing," Diane corrected, offering coffee which Max declined. "The house goes on the market next week. Tom says the maintenance is impractical now that it's just me." Max noted the bitterness in her voice. "You've heard about the graduation ceremony?" "Small town," Diane replied with a humorless smile. "Though Tom's version likely differs from reality. He hasn't told you about the divorce yet," Max said. "Not a question." Diane's hand trembled slightly as she set down her mug. "How did you?" "The same way I know about the Westridge project. About Victoria. About the Bear Trust Fund." Max held her gaze. "I know everything, Diane. And I suspect you do too." Silence stretched between them. Finally, Diane moved to a desk drawer and withdrew a thick folder. Bank statements. Property transfers. Evidence of, what do they call it? Dissipation of marital assets. She pushed the folder toward Max. "Tom thinks I'm still the naive faculty wife he married 15 years ago. He forgets I teach forensic accounting." Max raised an eyebrow. "You've been gathering evidence." "For over a year," Diane confirmed. "But evidence means nothing without leverage. The Reed name carries weight in this town. His father was mayor, his brother's on the county board. I'm just a childless wife who couldn't give him heirs. What if we combined our resources?" Max suggested. "Your evidence, my connections." Diane studied him carefully. "Tom says you're finished in this town. That by next month, redevelopment will control the Westridge project and most of your former clients." "Tom's overconfident," Max replied. "Always has been." "What are you proposing?" "An alliance. My attorney's already freezing assets and preparing countersuits. Your information could be invaluable. And what do I get in return?" Max smiled grimly. "What we both want. Justice. And enough financial security that neither of us ever has to worry about the Reed or Barrett families again." By that evening, Max had expanded his alliance. Gregory Winters had connected him with Sophia Patel, a forensic investigator specializing in financial fraud. Natalie Reeves continued providing insider information from redevelopment, and Diane had introduced him to her brother, Benjamin Harlow, a local news editor with a particular interest in corruption stories. They gathered in Greg's office after hours, spread across the conference table. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Oak Ridge's downtown, including the vacant Westridge block that Tom and Victoria believed would soon be theirs. "The Barrett Family Trust is significant," Sophia reported, sliding documents across the table. "Approximately $38 million in assets, including commercial properties throughout the county. Harold Barrett amended his will 3 years ago to include you as a beneficiary, 15% of the trust, which Victoria and Pamela Barrett concealed from you," Greg added. "That alone is actionable." "Judge Barrett's involvement complicates things," Benjamin noted. "He's been on the bench 20 years, has connections throughout the state judiciary." "Which is why we won't be fighting this in court," Max said. All eyes turned to him. "At least, not only in court." "What are you thinking?" Greg asked warily. Max laid out printouts from Natalie's flash drive. Tuesday night. First National Bank. Victoria, Tom, Judge Barrett, and Lawrence Foster are meeting to finalize financing for Westridge, using my anticipated business assets as collateral before they've even won them. "That's premature at best, potentially fraudulent," Sophia observed. "Exactly," Max agreed. "Benjamin, how would your paper feel about an exclusive on financial impropriety involving a sitting judge, a bank president, and a $1 million development project?" Benjamin's eyes gleamed. "We'd feel very positive about it, but we'd need irrefutable evidence." "Which is why we'll be there," Max said. "All of us, with evidence in hand and witnesses ready to testify." The group spent hours refining the plan, identifying vulnerabilities, preparing contingencies. As they dispersed near midnight, Diane lingered. "This won't just hurt them professionally," she said quietly. "Are you prepared for the personal fallout? Victoria is still Alex's mother. Max's jaw tightened. Alex made his choice at graduation. He chose truth. And afterwards, when the dust settles, there won't be dust, Max replied. Only scorched earth. The next morning, Max received a certified letter, Victoria's divorce filing, citing irreconcilable differences and demanding 50% of all assets, including the business. The petition included a temporary restraining order barring Max from harassing or contacting Victoria or accessing certain business accounts. Max called Alex, who answered immediately. Dad, Mom's lawyers just called me. They want me to provide a statement about your emotional instability and threatening behavior. What did you tell them? To go to hell, Alex replied fiercely. Carson's dad is a psychologist. He's willing to provide a counter-assessment if needed. Max felt a surge of pride mixed with concern. This could get ugly, son. I don't want you caught in the crossfire. I'm already in it, Alex said firmly. And I choose your side. After hanging up, Max drove to the cemetery where his parents were buried. He stood at their simple headstones, wind rustling the oak trees overhead. I promised I'd never be like him, Max told his mother's grave. Never abandon my family. But I didn't abandon them. They betrayed me. He knelt, brushing leaves from the stone. I'm about to do things you might not approve of. But I can't let them win. Not after everything we sacrificed. As he stood to leave, his phone buzzed with a text from Natalie. Emergency meeting called at redevelopment. Victoria arrived in tears. Something about Harold Barrett's trust. They know you're onto them. Max smiled grimly as he walked back to his car. The game was accelerating. Chapter 6, The Strike. First National Bank's executive conference room occupied the top floor of Oak Ridge's tallest building. Glass walls offering panoramic views of the town Max had helped rebuild over 20 years. From the adjacent rooftop garden where Max now stood with Benjamin Harlow, they could see directly into the room while remaining hidden behind decorative greenery. They've arrived, Benjamin murmured, adjusting his camera lens. Inside, Lawrence Foster greeted Victoria, Tom, and Judge Barrett with handshakes and smiles. The banker's silver hair caught the evening sunlight as he gestured toward the presentation materials arranged on the conference table. Max checked his watch. Natalie, in position, came to reply through his earpiece. Audio recording devices activated under table positions 2 and 5. Diane. Lobby security has the documentation. They're reviewing it now. Sophia. Financial evidence packets delivered to board members' homes 30 minutes ago. 3 have already called emergency meetings with their attorneys. Max nodded, satisfaction coursing through him. Gregory. Judge Watkins signed the emergency injunction 10 minutes ago. Sheriff's deputies are en route. ETA 12 minutes. Everything was in place. The trap set. Inside the conference room, Tom Reed stood to begin his presentation, pointing to renderings of the Westridge development. Max's development, stolen and rebranded with the Reed Development logo. Victoria sat beside him, her hand occasionally brushing his arm. Their conspiracy now in the open. Showtime, Max murmured. Benjamin's camera clicked rapidly, capturing Judge Barrett nodding approvingly at financial projections that hinged on assets they didn't yet possess. Lawrence Foster making notes on documents that presumed the transfer of Max's company valuation to secure the financing. Natalie's voice came through the earpiece. They're discussing the Barrett Trust now. Judge Barrett is confirming that Max's portion has been successfully redirected to Victoria through the morality clause. Max's jaw tightened. Betrayal upon betrayal. Suddenly, the conference room door opened. A bank security officer entered, followed by Diane Reed and Sophia Patel. The conversation inside halted abruptly. Right on schedule, Max said with grim satisfaction. Through the glass, they watched Tom rise, face contorting with anger as he confronted his wife. Judge Barrett moved toward Sophia, who calmly handed him a document that made him sink back into his chair, face ashen. What's happening? Benjamin asked, still photographing. Sophia just served Judge Barrett with evidence that he deliberately concealed trust assets from a beneficiary, a felony in this state. And Diane is informing Tom that she's filed her own divorce petition, including evidence of his financial fraud. The scene inside deteriorated into chaos. Victoria stood, shouting at Diane. Tom jabbed a finger at the security officer, who remained impassive. Lawrence Foster frantically gathered documents, face pale with panic. Max's phone vibrated. A text from Gregory. Deputies arriving now. Injunction being served. Exit via east stairwell. Time to go, Max told Benjamin. You have what you need for tomorrow's paper? The editor grinned. Front page, guaranteed. Conspiracy to defraud. Judge, banker, and developer caught in act. As they left, Max glanced back for one final look. Victoria had collapsed into a chair, mascara streaking her cheeks. Their eyes met through the glass, and Max saw the moment she realized the architect of her downfall had been watching all along. He turned away without acknowledgement and descended the stairs. The next 48 hours unfolded with the precision of a masterfully orchestrated symphony. Benjamin's explosive front-page story sent shockwaves through Oak Ridge. Judge Barrett announced an immediate health-related leave of absence. Lawrence Foster was placed on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. Reed Development's Westridge financing collapsed as investors withdrew support. Max sat in his home office, watching local news coverage of Tom Reed being escorted from his building, jacket pulled over his face to avoid cameras. Victoria hadn't been seen publicly since the bank meeting. According to Alex, she'd retreated to her mother's estate, refusing all calls. Greg arrived with a bottle of scotch and 2 glasses. Preliminary injunction granted. All transfers from the Barrett Trust frozen, pending investigation. Your company assets secured. Max accepted the drink, but didn't celebrate. And the Westridge project? The city council's reconsidering all bids in light of the scandal. With Reed Development imploding, you're positioned as the stable, ethical alternative. Make sure Natalie Reeves gets that VP position we discussed, Max reminded him. And that Diane Reed receives the consulting contract. Greg nodded, studying his friend with concern. This is just the beginning, you know. Victoria's lawyers will regroup. The Barrett family has resources we haven't even touched. Let them come, Max replied calmly. This was just the opening move. Later that evening, as rain pattered against the windows, Max's doorbell rang. Victoria stood on the porch, rainwater dripping from her hair, makeup smudged, designer clothes rumpled. You've destroyed everything, she said, voice raw. No, Max corrected. I've merely returned what was taken from me. Your family, Tom. You all conspired to strip me of everything I built. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, Victoria insisted. If you just agreed to a reasonable settlement. You mean surrender. Max, please. My mother's had a stress-induced collapse. Uncle Howard might be disbarred. Everything we've worked for. Everything I've worked for, Max interrupted coldly. While you were planning my destruction with Tom Reed. Victoria's facade cracked further. What do you want? To humiliate me more? To take everything? I want exactly what you and Tom and your family wanted. Max replied simply. Everything that's rightfully mine. Nothing more, nothing less. And us? 20 years of marriage. Max studied the woman he'd once loved, searching for any remnant of the person he'd built a life with. He found nothing. There is no us, Victoria. You ensured that the moment you conspired with Tom, the moment you hid my rightful inheritance, the moment you planned to ambush me at our son's graduation dinner. Victoria's shoulders slumped in defeat. You've won then? No, Max said, already closing the door. I've merely survived. The winning comes next. As Victoria turned to leave, Max called after her. The Barrett family has 1 week to offer a complete settlement acknowledging my full entitlement to the trust. After that, what happened today will seem like a gentle warning. The door closed on her stunned expression. Chapter 7. Counterattack. 1 week passed with no word from the Barrett family or their attorneys. Max used the time strategically, consolidating his position. Natalie Reeves had been installed as Chief Operations Officer of his rebranded company, Donovan Construction and Development. Diane Reed provided financial consultation, her expertise helping restructure the company's assets to insulate them from future attacks. The Westridge project remained in limbo as the city council investigated the bidding process, But Max had already moved on to 3 smaller developments, ensuring his business continued to thrive despite the turmoil. Alex had returned home, throwing himself into summer work at the company before starting college in the fall. Father and son had grown even closer through the crisis, spending evenings discussing business strategy or working on their motorcycle restoration project. "Have you heard from Mom?" Alex asked one evening in the garage, hands greasy from adjusting the carburetor. "No," Max answered honestly. "Have you? She calls daily, texts constantly, so she can explain everything if I'll just meet her." Alex wiped his hands on a rag. "I haven't responded." Max studied his son's profile, so reminiscent of his own at that age. "She's still your mother, Alex. Whatever's happened between us doesn't change that." "It changes everything," Alex countered. "She was willing to destroy you, to lie to me my entire life. How can I trust anything she says now?" Before Max could respond, his phone rang. Gregory Winters. The Barrett family attorney called. Greg reported. "They want a meeting. Tomorrow, their offices, 10 a.m. After I gave them a 1-week deadline? Not happening," Max replied. "Our offices. 9 a.m. Non-negotiable." The following morning, the Barrett family contingent arrived precisely at 9 a.m. Pamela Barrett, thin and regal despite recent events. Judge Howard Barrett, his typical confidence diminished. Their attorney, Willis Montgomery, an elder statesman of Oak Ridge legal circles. And Victoria, pale but composed in conservative business attire. Conspicuously absent, Thomas Reed, who, according to Natalie's intelligence, was frantically trying to shore up his collapsing company while fighting Diane's increasingly aggressive divorce proceedings. Max had arranged the conference room strategically. He sat at the head of the table, Gregory to his right, Sophia Patel to his left. Behind him stood Benjamin Harlow, recorder in hand, and Natalie Reeves, whose presence visibly unsettled Victoria. "Thank you for coming," Max began formally. "I understand you have a settlement proposal." Willis Montgomery cleared his throat. "Before we begin, Mr. Donovan, we must insist that members of the press not be present during privileged settlement discussions." "Mr. Harlow is here as my personal media consultant," Max replied smoothly. "Ms. Reeves as my chief operating officer. Both have signed confidentiality agreements." The message was clear. Max would dictate terms, not the Barretts. Montgomery placed a document folder on the table. "We are prepared to offer a complete settlement of all outstanding matters between the Donovan and Barrett families." Max didn't reach for it. "Summarize the key points. The Barrett family acknowledges your entitlement to 15% of Harold Barrett's trust, approximately $5.7 million in assets. Mrs. Donovan is willing to forego any claim to Donovan Construction in exchange for the family home and a one-time settlement of $2 million. Max exchanged glances with Gregory, who gave an imperceptible nod. "Inadequate," Max stated flatly. "The trust percentage is correct, but your valuation is outdated. Current market value of the trust assets exceeds $45 million. Pamela Barrett's thin face flushed with anger. "Preposterous." Sophia Patel slid a financial analysis across the table. "The Barrett Commercial Properties portfolio alone is worth $28 million as of last quarter's assessment. The Lakeshore development adds another $12 million. Investment accounts approximately $5 million. And then there's the matter of the undisclosed offshore holdings in the Cayman Islands." Judge Barrett's face went slack. Victoria gasped audibly. "How did you—" Montgomery began, then caught himself. "The better question," Max continued calmly, "is why Harold Barrett established those accounts and why they weren't disclosed in the trust documentation." Gregory produced another document. "We've prepared a more accurate settlement proposal. Mrs. Donovan retains her personal property only. All marital assets revert to Mr. Donovan, including the family home. Mr. Donovan receives his full 15% of the Barrett Trust, properly valued, plus 5 years of retroactive distributions that were deliberately withheld. This is highway robbery." Pamela hissed. "No," Max corrected. "It's justice. But we're not finished." He turned to Judge Barrett. "Howard, Your involvement in concealing trust assets constitutes judicial misconduct at minimum, criminal conspiracy at worst. Your retirement papers are included in our settlement package. Sign them, and the evidence of your misconduct remains private. The judge's face contorted with rage. You dare threaten me? It's not a threat, Max replied. It's a consequence. Victoria, who had remained silent, finally spoke. And if we refuse these outrageous terms? Max smiled thinly. Then tomorrow morning, Benjamin's paper runs an expose on Harold Barrett's offshore accounts, their connection to 3 development projects with questionable permitting, and Judge Barrett's role in ensuring those projects faced no legal obstacles. Silence fell over the room. The Barrett family exchanged glances, decades of privilege and power crumbling before Max's methodical assault. You have until 5 p.m. today, Max concluded, standing to signal the meeting's end. After that, everything becomes public. As the Barrett delegation rose to leave, Victoria lingered. Max, please. This will destroy my family. The family that called me an outsider? That conspired to take everything from me. Max's voice remained steady. You made your choice, Victoria. These are the consequences. At 4:58 p.m., Gregory received the signed settlement documents. The Barrett family had capitulated on every point. Victory should have tasted sweet. Instead, as Max sat alone in his office that evening, he felt only a hollow satisfaction. The betrayal had been avenged, but 20 years of his life remained in ashes. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You've won the battle but created new enemies. Some secrets are worth dying for. TR. Max stared at the message from Tom Reed, feeling not fear, but anticipation. The war, it seemed, was not yet over. Chapter 8. The Buried Truth. The text from Tom Reed proved to be more than an idle threat. 3 days after the Barrett family settlement, Max arrived at a job site to find critical equipment vandalized, causing thousands in damages and weeks of delays. A week later, 2 key investors suddenly withdrew from a development project without explanation. Then building permits for the Westridge development, finally awarded to Donovan Construction, were mysteriously lost in the city system. It's Reed, Natalie confirmed after investigating. He's calling in every favor, leveraging every connection to sabotage your recovery. Max had expected retaliation, but the scope of Reed's campaign surprised even him. The man was fighting like someone with nothing to lose, or something substantial to protect. There's more to this than a failed affair and business rivalry, Max told Gregory as they reviewed the mounting evidence of interference. Tom's message mentioned secrets worth dying for. What are we missing? The answer came from an unexpected source. Diane Reed requested an urgent meeting at a coffee shop outside town, away from familiar eyes. I found something while clearing out Tom's home office, she said without preamble, sliding a USB drive across the table. Financial records going back 10 years. Transactions between Barrett Commercial Properties and redevelopment that predate Tom's official partnership with Victoria. Max's eyes narrowed. How far back? 8 years, Diane replied. Long before he left your company. The amount starts small, but grows substantially about 5 years ago. When Victoria and I were having marriage problems, Max noted, when she started those weekend retreats. Diane hesitated. There's more. Personal emails between Tom and Harold Barrett from 6 years ago. They discuss a development called Project Phoenix. Max frowned. Never heard of it. Because it never officially existed, Diane explained. It was the code name for a land acquisition scheme. They were buying properties through shell companies before announcing major infrastructure projects that would increase land values. Using insider information from Judge Barrett about upcoming county developments, Max realized. Illegal insider trading, essentially. Exactly. The most recent was the Lakeshore Tract, purchased for $3 million through shell companies, rezoned with Judge Barrett's help, then sold to Barrett Commercial for $12 million. Max leaned back, pieces clicking into place. And Victoria became involved after her father brought her in. According to the emails, she was reluctant at first, but eventually embraced the scheme. She was the one who suggested bringing you in as an unwitting partner in some of the developments. The betrayal cut deeper than Max had imagined. Not just an affair, not just a divorce ambush, but years of manipulation, using him and his company's reputation to legitimize their illegal operations. Does Tom know you have this? No, Diane answered. But he knows something's missing. That's why he's escalating against you. He's terrified you'll discover the full extent of the conspiracy. Max spent the night reviewing the files from Diane, each revelation stoking the cold fury that had replaced his initial shock. The corruption ran deep. Harold Barrett, Judge Barrett, Tom Reed, and eventually Victoria, all participants in a years-long scheme that had generated millions in fraudulent profits. And Max had been the perfect front. The self-made success story whose reputation for integrity had helped shield their activities from scrutiny. Don found him still at his desk when Alex appeared in the doorway, concern etched on his young face. You haven't slept, his son observed. No, Max admitted, but I found answers. He explained the discoveries, watching Alex's expression shift from disbelief to disgust. So Mom wasn't just cheating with Tom, Alex said slowly. She was part of a criminal conspiracy. For years, Max confirmed, using our family, my business as cover. Alex was quiet for a long moment. What are you going to do? End it, Max replied simply. Completely. The plan took shape over the next week. Sophia Patel compiled the financial evidence into a comprehensive report. Benjamin Harlow prepared a series of articles detailing the corruption. Gregory filed sealed court documents that would be released at the strategic moment. But Max needed one final piece to complete the puzzle. Confirmation from someone inside the conspiracy. Someone who could testify to the knowing participation of all parties. That someone, surprisingly, turned out to be Pamela Barrett. She's facing financial ruin, Natalie reported after making discreet inquiries. The trust assets are frozen pending your settlement. Judge Barrett's retirement has cut off their legal protection. Victoria is spending what liquid assets remain on private security after Tom's threats escalated. Offer her immunity and financial security, Max instructed, in exchange for everything she knows about Project Phoenix, Harold Barrett's offshore accounts, and Victoria's involvement. Pamela Barrett agreed to meet at her estate, once a showcase of old money elegance, now feeling neglected as financial pressures mounted. The grand entrance hall, with its sweeping staircase, still impressed, but Max noticed the subtle signs of decline. Postponed maintenance, fewer staff, emptier rooms. I always told Harold you were sharper than you appeared, Pamela said by way of greeting, leading him to a sitting room far from where servants might overhear. He underestimated you. We all did. A common mistake, Max replied, declining her offer of tea. I understand you're willing to provide information about Project Phoenix. Pamela's aristocratic features hardened. For the right considerations. Full immunity from prosecution. A guaranteed income from what remains of your portion of the trust after my settlement. Protection from Tom Reed. And Victoria? Pamela asked, a mother despite everything. I'll ensure she's not destitute, Max conceded. But she will face consequences. Pamela nodded slowly, resignation in every line of her body. Harold started it. After the recession hit our legitimate investments hard. Just small manipulations at first. Howard ensuring favorable rulings. Advance notice of county projects. When did Victoria become involved? 5 years ago, after she discovered what was happening. Pamela's gaze fixed on a family portrait above the fireplace. Harold, Howard, Victoria, herself, all smiling confidently. She was outraged initially, threatened to tell you everything. What changed? Tom Reed, Pamela said bitterly. He was already working with Harold while still at your company. He convinced Victoria that the family legacy was at stake, that you would never understand necessary business practices with your rigid ethical standards. The contempt in her voice when describing his ethics told Max everything about the value system that had shaped Victoria. And the affair began as business, evolved into something more. Victoria convinced herself she deserved better than a man who didn't understand how the world really works. Pamela's laugh was brittle, as if corruption and insider trading were simply sophisticated business practices. By the time Max left, he had Pamela's signed affidavit detailing the entire conspiracy, Names, dates, amounts, methods. The final piece of his retribution. That night, he called a meeting of his allies at his home. Gregory, Sophia, Benjamin, Natalie, and Diane gathered in his living room as he outlined the endgame. Tomorrow, everything goes public, Max explained. Benjamin's expose in the morning. Sophia's financial report released to state regulators. Gregory's sealed indictments unsealed. The fallout will be nuclear, Gregory warned. The Barrett name, redevelopment, half the county's business elite, all implicated. Good, Max said simply. What about Victoria? Diane asked quietly. Max's expression remained impassive. She made her choices. She lives with the consequences. Later, as the others departed, Alex joined Max on the back porch. Father and son sat in silence, watching the stars emerge over the property Victoria had tried to take. Will this be enough? Alex finally asked. Will it ever feel finished? Max considered the question carefully. It's not about feeling finished. It's about justice, about consequences for choices. And forgiveness? Some betrayals can't be forgiven, Max replied. Only survived. As if summoned by their conversation, Max's phone lit up with Victoria's number. After weeks of silence from his estranged wife, the timing seemed almost prescient. Alex saw the caller ID. Are you going to answer? Max stared at the phone, then declined the call. No. Whatever she has to say, it's too late. The phone immediately rang again. And again. On the fourth attempt, unease pricked at Max's consciousness. He answered, putting the call on speaker. Victoria's voice came through, shaking with terror. Max, help me. Tom's here. He has a gun. He says if I testify against him, he'll... Her voice cut off with a scream. Then Tom Reed's voice, slurred with alcohol or drugs. Should have minded your own business, Donovan. Some secrets are worth killing for. The call ended abruptly. Max was already moving, car keys in hand. Call the police, he instructed Alex. Tell them armed intruder at your mother's condo. Then call Gregory. Despite everything, Victoria was still Alex's mother, still the woman he'd once built a life with. And Max Donovan was not a man who would leave anyone at the mercy of a desperate criminal, even someone who had betrayed him. The night had one final revelation to deliver. One final test of the man Max had become in the crucible of betrayal. Chapter 9. Ashes to Foundation. Max drove through Oak Ridge's darkened streets with focused intensity, hands steady on the wheel despite the chaos unfolding. Police sirens wailed in the distance, responding to Alex's call, but Max knew he was closer to Victoria's downtown condo than any patrol unit. His mind calculated coldly as he drove. Tom Reed was cornered, his business collapsing, his reputation in tatters, his illegal activities about to be exposed. A desperate man, possibly intoxicated, armed, and with nothing left to lose. The most dangerous kind of enemy. Max parked a block from Victoria's building and approached cautiously, staying in shadows. The luxury high-rise security system would normally prevent unauthorized entry, but Max still had the access code Victoria hadn't changed. Another oversight in her unraveling life. The lobby was deserted at this late hour. Max bypassed the elevator, too noisy, too obvious, and took the emergency stairs two at a time to the 14th floor. The hallway was silent when he emerged. No signs of disturbance. No curious neighbors investigating commotion. Outside Victoria's door, Max paused, listening. Muffled voices inside. Tom's aggression, Victoria's fear. The crash of something valuable breaking. Max tried the door handle. Locked. He stepped back, considering options. Breaking down the door would alert Reed, potentially escalating an already volatile situation. Waiting for police risked Victoria's life if Reed's desperation peaked. His phone vibrated silently. Alex. Police are 5 minutes out, his son reported in a tense whisper. Gregory's contacted a judge for an emergency warrant. Diane says Tom keeps a backup gun in his glove compartment. Stay put, Max instructed. I'm outside her door now. Dad, wait for the police. Max ended the call and dialed Victoria's number, switching his phone to silent immediately after. From inside the condo, he heard her ringtone, the chiming melody they danced to at their wedding 20 years ago. Tom's voice shouted, Don't answer that. The distraction was enough. Max retrieved the emergency key Victoria had always kept hidden in a magnetic box behind the hallway fire extinguisher. Some habits never changed. The door opened silently on well-maintained hinges. Max slipped inside, cataloging the scene in seconds. Victoria pinned to the living room wall by Tom Reed, whose back was to the door. A handgun dangled from Tom's right hand as he shouted incoherently, his left forearm pressed against Victoria's throat. She saw Max first, eyes widening with a mix of terror and disbelief. Tom, lost in his rage, didn't notice. Think I'll let you destroy me? Tom was saying, alcohol heavy on his breath. Everything I built, everything we planned. Max moved silently across the room, stopping only when he reached an antique floor lamp. A Barrett family heirloom Victoria had always prized. Without hesitation, he grasped its heavy brass base and swung. The impact sent Tom Reed crashing to the floor, the gun skittering under a sofa. Victoria collapsed against the wall, gasping for breath, red marks blooming on her throat. Tom rolled on his back, dazed but conscious, blood seeping from a gash on his temple. Recognition dawned in his eyes as Max stood over him. Donovan, he slurred. Should have known you'd play hero. Not a hero. Max replied evenly, retrieving the gun from under the sofa. Just finishing what you started. Tom's laugh held no humor. Finishing? You have no idea what you've stumbled into. The Barretts, the development deals, that's just the surface. There's more. Things that would destroy this whole town if they came out. Victoria pushed herself upright, voice raspy from Tom's assault. He's lying. Max trying to save himself. Am I? Tom challenged, eyes never leaving Max's. Tell him about the Westbrook fire, Victoria. Tell him who really arranged it. Tell him why your father approved developments on land that should have been condemned. Max's grip tightened on the gun. The Westbrook fire, an apartment complex that had burned 8 years ago, killing 3 residents. The investigation had blamed faulty wiring. The property had been redeveloped by Barrett Commercial thereafter. Insurance fraud and involuntary manslaughter, Max realized aloud. Is that what Harold Barrett was hiding in those offshore accounts? Payoffs to inspectors? To investigators? Victoria's face had gone ashen. Max, please. Sirens wailed outside, coming closer. Tom struggled to sit up, blood dripping down his face. You won, Donovan. Destroyed me, destroyed the Barretts. But what will you tell your precious son when he learns his grandfather was a murderer? When he learns his mother knew about it all along? Police pounded on the door, shouting instructions. Max looked at Victoria, this stranger he'd once loved, mother of his child, complicit in corruption beyond what he'd imagined. Max, Victoria whispered, reaching for him. It wasn't supposed to be like this. No one was supposed to get hurt in the fire. I never knew until after. Save it for your statement, Max said, stepping away from her touch. Tell the police everything, Victoria. Every last detail. Or I'll make sure Alex knows exactly what his Barrett heritage really means. The police burst in, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Max carefully placed the gun on the floor and raised his hands. He saved my life, Victoria said immediately, pointing at Tom. He's the one who broke in with a gun. Max stopped him. Hours later, after police statements and medical examinations, Max sat in his car outside the police station. Gregory had handled the legal complexities, ensuring Max faced no charges for his intervention. Tom Reed had been arrested for breaking and entering, assault, illegal possession of a firearm, and a host of other charges that would keep him in prison for years. But Max felt no triumph, only exhaustion, and an unexpected emptiness where his hunger for revenge had burned. His phone rang. Alex again. Is Mom okay? His son asked immediately. Physically, yes, Max answered truthfully. She's giving her statement now. About everything. Everything, Alex echoed, understanding the implications. Yes, when she's done, there won't be any Barrett family legacy left to protect. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Alex spoke, his young voice suddenly older. What happens now, Dad? It was the question Max had been avoiding. With his revenge complete, his enemies neutralized, what remained? An empire built on the ashes of betrayal? A life defined by what he'd lost rather than what he'd built? We start over, Max said, surprising himself with the answer. Not forgetting, but not letting it consume us either. 3 months later, Max stood on the grounds of the newly renamed Phoenix Heights development, formerly the Westridge Project. Construction crews swarmed across the site, transforming abandoned buildings into what would become a mixed-use community with affordable housing at its core. Diane Reed had been instrumental in the redesign, her financial insights helping create a project that would generate profits while serving the community. Natalie Reeves oversaw operations with impressive efficiency. Benjamin Harlow's newspaper had become a champion for transparency in local government following his Barrett expose. Victoria had avoided prison by cooperating fully with authorities, revealing the extent of the Barrett family's corruption. She'd moved to another state, maintaining limited contact with Alex through carefully monitored video calls. The divorce had been finalized without contest. Judge Barrett had not been so fortunate. Facing multiple federal charges, he'd accepted a plea deal but still faced years in prison. Pamela Barrett, true to her aristocratic roots, had fled to Europe before charges could be filed, leaving behind the family name and fortune she'd once valued above all else. Mr. Donovan, a young architect, approached, plans in hand. We've finalized the community center design. It incorporates those changes you suggested for the youth programs. Max reviewed the drawings and nodded approval. Perfect. And the scholarship fund? The Donovan Foundation paperwork is complete. The first scholarships will be awarded next fall. Alex joined them, having deferred college for a year to work alongside his father in rebuilding not just the business, but its purpose. At 18, he carried himself with a confidence beyond his years, tempered by the harsh lessons of the past months. The Barrett name will represent something different now. Alex had told Max when they decided to create the foundation using a portion of Max's trust inheritance. Something built rather than taken. As the architect departed, father and son stood surveying the construction site, a metaphor for their own reconstruction after the earthquake of betrayal. Any regrets? Alex asked quietly. Max considered the question carefully. The revenge he'd executed had been complete, devastating to those who'd betrayed him. He'd shown no mercy, accepted no excuses, forgiven no transgressions. He'd reclaimed everything taken from him and more. Yet the victory had revealed a truth he hadn't expected. The man who emerged from vengeance was not the same man who had entered it. Harder in some ways, perhaps wiser in others. No regrets, Max answered finally. Just lessons about what to build next and who to build it with. As they walked back toward the construction trailers, Max's phone buzzed with a text from Gregory. Final Barrett property auction complete. Trust dissolution finished. It's officially over. Max read the message, then deleted it without responding. Some chapters needed to be closed completely. The sun set over Phoenix Heights, casting long shadows from the steel frameworks rising from what had once been ruins. Not just a development, but a statement that from destruction could come creation, from betrayal, purpose, from endings, new beginnings. Max Donovan had lost a life built on false foundations, but in its place, he was constructing something stronger, something true, not forgiveness, never that, but perhaps finally freedom. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen, and I'll see you there.